delighted to be joined today by Afua Hagan. Afua,
Yes.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I appreciate we're not meant to timestamp this, but we're just having a lovely conversation about Christmas, so thank you. I'm very excited.
I think we've got one Mrs. Christmas and one Grinch here.
That's us. And that's where it works. Listen, let me delve straight in. Broadcaster and journalist, and also someone who politely kind of opinionated and has ideas and opinions like that. In terms of the media landscape, how do you feel people view broadcasters, journalists at this moment in time? Is it tough out there?
It is tough. It's tough for so many reasons. I think the advent of social media means that lots of people now get their news from social media rather than from traditional mediums, TV. I don't know about you, but when I was young, it was a long time ago, it was news at 6, news at 10. At one point it was across 4 channels. We didn't have really 24-hour rolling news until kind of like the late 90s. And so we really trusted the sources where we got our journalism from.
Yeah.
And now, because of the advent of social media, like I said, and also there just seems to be a real mistrust of your big media outlets, whether that's a Sky or a BBC or any of them. Lots of people really do have a sense of mistrust in those huge outlets. And I think at the moment, with the way the news cycle is, at the moment, let's be honest, it's quite grim. You know, we have lots of destabilising elements, whether that is the war in the Middle East, whether that is the war in Ukraine, whether that is upcoming elections in America and here in the United Kingdom, if they're ever going to call a general election. Yeah. And so there's lots of elements at play and lots of things that people will mistrust. You've got the advent of AI as well.
Yes.
Lots of videos out there that are not real, that cannot be sourced. But when people see things that go viral, then they believe it. Because if you think, 2,000 people retweeted this has got to be real. You know, people are not doing their due diligence and looking for where those sources come from. And then you have people like me who are at the forefront of trying to tell those stories or commenting on those stories. And so people will often aim their mistrust directly at you, the person, as opposed to at the story, at the sources. You know, there's a kind of real misunderstanding of where a story comes from and how it gets to the point where it will go on air, rather than on social media. You or I right now could mock up a video of some atrocity, happening somewhere, pop it on a fake account, get a blue verified tick or whatever, put it there, and then it can go viral.
Yes.
And no one cares where it came from. But when it comes to newspapers, television, there's lots of things that people have to go through and lots of people you have to go through before those things end up on air or in print.
So responsibility from your perspective, is it up to journalists or broadcasters in order to educate the public about how they should be thinking, or is it up to the public to kind of get streetwise?
I think it's up to the public to get streetwise, if I'm really honest. I think it's really up to all of us, because I consume news as well.
Yes.
It's to think about where you're consuming it from and think about where things are sourced from. Also realising that journalists and broadcasters, commentators, panellists, we are also people. Yes. We go home to our families and we have to cook dinner at night. And, when you are abusing someone on social media or dragging them for an opinion that's different from yours, that person is still a parent, still a wife, still a husband, and I think people have to realise that as well.
So how do you cope? How do you disassociate yourself from this? And I'll ask my second question afterwards.
And that can be difficult at times, especially when, like I said, the news cycle is quite heavy. And especially with the Israel-Hamas war, there's lots of pictures and video out there that's really hard to watch. And when you have to talk about it, you have to comment on it, and you have to report on it, that can be difficult. And I report on a lot of royal stuff, and, people can get really, really heated about those issues, especially when you've got things about class and race involved in that. And of course, people don't always agree with you, which is fine.
Yeah.
So I think for me personally, when I go home, even though I do work a lot from home, when I'm done working, I am done working. So I put my phone down, stop looking on social media, and just really sort of engage with the people I live with. And we play a lot of board games in my house. Don't know if they love it, but I do.
They're forced to do it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. It's just really about being able to separate what you're putting out there, what's involved in your work, and who you are as a person, and realizing that you are not just the sum total of the work that you've done that day, or anybody's opinions of you. I always say to myself, other people's opinions of me are really none of my business.
So can I ask, kind of, we're seeing it more and more, especially in the BBC, the difference between reporting and opinions.
Yeah.
Again, as a journalist and someone who, again, has opinions, especially around diversity and other areas, how am I meant to distinguish between what you're reporting to me and what is coming from you in terms of your opinion on the whole situation?
Yeah, and that can be difficult, and sometimes it's difficult for myself if you're in the story, and especially if it's something to do with race or sex or class that can be really emotive. I think when I am reporting on something and it's very straight and it's all about the fact versus the fiction, that's when you really go back to your training. So it's the who, what, where, why, when, and how. The principles of the story. Is it man eats dog or is it dog eats man? What is it really all about? What's the crux of the story? And then if you are corresponding rather than just reporting, then that's when you can tell the story, fact as it is, and then you can give a bit of comment and a bit of opinion where perhaps you think the story will go, or what you think should happen. So it's distinguishing those two things. But I think it's always really, really pertinent that the facts of the story remain 100% true, as much as that is possible.
And is it something you kind of, you naturally slipped into, kind of in terms of your training as a journalist, in terms of giving a fact, and you started giving your opinions, or is it something you always set out, I want to have a voice?
I think when I started out, I was all about making sure that stories were told accurately, and people's who didn't have a voice, that their stories were told accurately. When I was in my final year of high school, Castlehead High School, Shara in Paisley, I wrote a dissertation about the murder of Stephen Lawrence, and the police's response to that, and my conclusion was, is the Met Police institutionally racist? That was kind of the question, that was the premise. And what I was really, really, really determined to do was tell the facts of what happened to Stephen Lawrence that night in Eltham.
Yeah.
And also the fact of what happened afterwards. So, there was people going around talking about who had done it, but why was nobody trying to find out? Why was nobody trying to find these people? What was it that was stopping police officers involved from getting to the crux of the truth of what happened that night? And why wasn't that something that the police excelled to do? And so it was all really, for me, it was really about the facts of that case, the facts of what happened to Stephen, the fact that his brother wasn't involved, and they tried to make it so, and all the things that happened afterwards. And I thought it was really, really important that Stephen's story and his brother's story and his mother's story and his father's story were told in the best way possible. And even though I wasn't reporting on it, I was writing a dissertation on it. It was really important for that to come through. And I think that really set me up for journalism, for training, for going forward. Because out there, growing up as a black girl in Scotland, there was probably lots of stories like mine. And my story growing up is far from dramatic, at all. I grew up with two parents. Father was a dentist, lived in a village, no drama whatsoever. But it's still my story.
Yeah.
And I found when I moved to London, a lot of people have these assumptions about you, single parent family, what part of South London are you from? None of that was true. None of that was my story. And so I think it was really accurate and so really pertinent that everybody has a chance to tell their story accurately. And that's something that absolutely has to be done. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie did a really, really great TED talk about the danger of a single story.
Yes.
And how that can breed stereotypes. And that's really powerful to me, because a lot of people will stereotype me one way or the other. You have a Scottish accent, but you're black. That doesn't really work for us. So are you being too posh? Are you not black enough? Or you might look at me and think, oh, black woman, journalist, obviously has a hard upbringing. No. But it's other people's story. You have to be accurate when you're telling people's story. Everybody should have a voice, no matter where they come from, and their story has to be told accurately, and I think that's really, really important. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, but I really like the answer. Let me ask one last question, which I find really interesting. Kind of for you, like obviously we're looking at kind of the world of public speaking, going to events, and kind of maybe hosting a conference, something like that. When you stand up on stage and you're starting the day and kind of you're hosting the whole thing, do you feel like you have to validate your right to be up on stage and actually give people the kind of why you've got the credibility and why you've got the expertise, or is it something kind of that it's like you're the audience, kind of embrace who I am and come along with me?
Yeah, I definitely go for that sort of. I'm here, there's a reason why I've been booked.
Yes.
So I just love the opportunity to go into a company or an organisation that maybe I wouldn't be able to go to just because I wouldn't know anybody that was there. It just, wouldn't be somewhere my paths would cross in my everyday life. So I love meeting all these people and all these really, like, every organisation under the sun. And I often, I go there and think to myself, okay, I'm here, I'm on stage, let's all have a good time, let's all learn something.
Yeah.
So I'm more like, come along with me, get involved. I may not often see people in the audience that look like me, but I try not to let that intimidate me. And I always think to myself before I go up there, I'm also going to learn from these guys the same way that they're going to learn from me. And I might be able to, stand up there for 45 minutes or something and talk about myself and talk about the issues I'm there for, or host or moderate. But then there's always going to be a chance for interaction, and actually that's the bit I love the most, is when you get a chance to talk to each other, with people ask you questions at the end, and you get to expand more on what you've talked about. It's always the best bit for me. But I always got up there thinking, you know what, I'm going to just own this space that I'm in. I'm here for a reason, but I'm also going to learn something too. And I'm like a constant learner. If I could go back to you, I would.
Can I ask a question? Just like in terms of upbringing, you were in a little village and nothing really happened.
Yeah.
Were you kind of, and now you're a journalist, and like, were you the nosy one? Do you love to find out stories?
Yes.
Is it just something that maybe just comes to?
Yeah.
Do you think are all journalists? Are you?
You have to have a natural noisiness.
Right.
You have to want to find out things. Like, people will always be like, having a conversation with you is always very difficult. like my best friend will be telling me a story. She's like, "Oh, so the other day I was at the gym and I saw this guy." I was like, "What did you wear to the gym? What gym were you at? What class were you in?" I just want to share the story. Like, I need the details. We need the context. And you have to have a natural nosiness. And I would like, where I lived and the kids that lived all around us and stuff. I was always like doing these. Why don't we go to that bit of the woods that we're not supposed to go to? There's got to be a reason for it, guys. So let's just go there, find out, and then we don't need to go there again. They were like, our parents said we shouldn't. I was like, why shouldn't we? Let's find out. So naturally nosy. And actually, my husband always says that when he looks at pictures of me when I'm younger, he always says I always have a look on my face as if I'm looking into the distance or looking into the future or looking at something else rather than concentrating on the camera. He's like, you've just got nosiness written all over your face. I really do.
I love that. I like that. Listen, thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely chatting.
Thank you.